Hello and welcome to a bonus episode from Read Brave, a comics podcast from the Graphomania Podcast Network. I'm Vinton Bain. And today we are talking to comic book creators Robert Henry and Joe Evans. I do have to apologize for the quality of this episode. It was the first time that I tried recording with 4 different mics on 4 different channels on my new mixer. So forgive us this time, and I'm going to try to work that out in the future. Now, here's Cory and Scout Casto interviewing Robert Henry and Joe Evans.
My name's Joe Evans, member of a great idea and hoping to get it out there for you. And I'll go ahead and throw it to Rob Henry.
Hello, Rob Henry. I am a writer and artist, and I've been following comic books for a long time in my life, and just it's something that I enjoy doing, and it's kind of something I did when I was younger, and now I'm moving back into it, and so we're just here to kind of talk comics and about creative process and what have you. So
awesome. Joe, let's start with you. I would like to know how you got into comics and then how you got into creating comics.
Well, the funny part about that is the first comic book I ever picked up, it was my grandmother. Bought me a 75-cent comic book. It was Amazing Spider-Man 317. So
that's awesome.
It was big, as far as that moment of kind of transcending a thought process. So that's kind of taken me and propelled me because I've been drawing ever since, and I just love it. I mean, it's passion, so I like it.
That's awesome. I think that my experience has been that everybody got into comics from Spider-Man, X-Men, or Batman. Maybe not across the board, but I would say at least a good 92% of the time.
I think people that started reading when they were younger, maybe, for sure. Yeah.
Ironically enough, probably for me, when I got seriously into it, was actually G.I. Joe and
really?
Transformers.
That's
Awesome.
Yeah, those were the ones that really kind of propelled me into actually when I started. I mean, I read Spider-Man and all these other things when I was a kid, but when I actually started getting into going, these are neat, I want to collect these, it was actually G.I. Joe and Transformers that got me and that hooked me.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
And Snake Eyes is probably part of the reason why I have a leg that's bummed out right now. 'Cause I thought I was a ninja back in the day, and I'm paying for it now. So,
oh man. So Robert, how did you get into creating comics?
Well, it was something I wanted to do for a long time. I mean, when I was younger, I drew all the time. And then as I got older, I started writing. And obviously it seems like a combination of the two, it seems perfect marriage, so to speak. So when that was what I wanted to do, was do comic books. And then when I graduated high school, I kind of worked towards that goal and was successful. Got published in a couple of things in the late 90s, just little indie things, nothing to write home about, but it was there. And then market kind of took a dive. And so you go back to school and you do what you got to do. And then I became a photographer. Did that for a long time, but always stayed in comics and collected and read and everything else. And then when I went away to school, Savannah College of Art and Design, I actually went there with the intent of going for sequential art because they actually have the degree in sequential art there.
Yeah.
But when I got there, they had me retake some classes and do these other things. So I wasn't able to get right into the meat of the sequential art degree. So I ended up switching my majors and I minored in sequential art.
Interesting.
So
that's cool.
And then now came back home, did photography for a few years, had a studio, did those things, and now gotten pulled back into it. And we've been working on projects kind of off and on for a long time, and finally things are really gelling and kind of coming together. So
cool. Awesome. So as comic creators, do you have a dream job that you would like to work on either separately or together, say like with a character that's already developed, like X-Men or something?
well, and to be honest with you, I think it's all about giving back to the fans. Everybody deserves an opportunity to enjoy something that is great. And if we have the opportunity or put in a situation where we can give that back to people, because, I mean, I remember, growing up with the Michael Keaton Batman, and that was good. I remember actually growing up with the bad George Clooney, which was horrible. Right. But to that particular point, I mean, the thing is, if you can give people something that gives them the opportunity to involve themselves and feel good, from the heart and say, hey, that was great. I enjoyed that experience. That's one of the things that I want to be able to go ahead and put my foot stamp or my feet prints or my handprints on, you know, because that's the best that I can possibly actually expect to be able to get out of, you know, the business. You know, it's not about the money. It's about that opportunity to be able to share something that people want to be involved in.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, when it becomes about the money, that's when you start to lose the love of doing it a lot of times, which is unfortunate.
Yeah.
Although the money would be nice, right?
I agree 110% because, I mean, when it comes down to it, I'd rather go ahead and go to bed and say, hey, I've impacted, you know, people. They've seen that necessary moment, that experience. Money, I'll get that elsewhere. So,
Yeah.
What about you, Robert?
Well, for me, most everything is about, you know, creating my own stories, my own things. But I mean, I can't lie. I mean, it would be amazing to work on something that I was a huge fan of, maybe growing up. Whether it's you know, an X-Men book or something crazy like that, would be a lot of fun. But I'd want to do something kind of like, Barry Windsor Smith got to do with like the life death things, where he kind of got to do his own little thing off to the side. You know,
Yeah.
it would be really fun to work with some of those characters like that. But the problem with it is, you know, I don't really read a lot of those anymore. I still keep up with it kind of on a little bit, but now I like to use the analogy that it's almost like you run into people you went to high school with. You know, you have a history with them, but you know, lots happened and people have changed, and now it's like,
the meaning changes.
Yeah, and when did the X-Men? What? When did that happen? You know, and I get characters have to grow, they do, and things have to change, and so. But it would be fun to do something like that, or work within some realms like that. Would be really cool. So,
That's cool. Yeah. Do you have any current comics that are your favorite? And it doesn't even have to be a current comic, but like what you are currently reading. What's your current favorite?
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, that's funny because I actually kind of stopped reading comics for a little bit, but I'm really big into what's going on with the Amazing Spider-Man right now.
Yeah.
I like the concept of, you know, giving Peter Parker a break for a change.
Yeah.
Which I think everybody deserves a break, you know, when it comes down to it. You know, I mean, you work so hard, you invest so much time, you want to go ahead and take care of people, and you deserve a break. So I like that concept. One of the other things I'm really enjoying right now would be Invincible, because I just never know when I open the page what's going to happen. And of course, if you're not watching it or if you're not reading it, Walking Dead is crazy business right now.
Yeah,
So,
definitely.
you know, I mean, I just like the experience. I like to go ahead and open up a page and go ahead and jump into a new world. So it makes me happy.
Awesome.
yeah, I'm more on the independent stuff. You know, I mean, really on the kind of the outside there. Saga, really enjoy that.
Yeah.
Then really enjoy. There's a few other odds and ends. I'm trying to think of some of the other things. Like when you put you on the spot, you're like, wait a second, what is it? You know, but like Bone, for instance. I mean, if you go back to the older stuff, I mean, he recently put out that little anniversary thing with a new story and everything. That I like that a lot. See, there was something else that came out really good recently. I'm trying to remember what it was now. Well, if I think of it, I'll let you know on that. But no, there's a lot of other really fun stuff out there, and it's just I've been picking up a lot of stuff lately. But the sad thing is it's like they're in piles. And speaking of Invincible, sorry, quick change there. I've been picking up the hardcovers of those, and so I'm on the third one of that. So I'm kind of so it's weird because I'm discovering it, but a lot of other people are well aware of what's been going on. They're way ahead of me on that. But
Wait till you get to volume 9.
You brought up Saga. I recently went back. Saga was one of the things that really got me in. I started reading Saga, and after I'd read everything that come out, at that point it was only like maybe 10 issues.
yeah.
I started Why the Last Man, and I was absolutely hooked.
Yes.
But I thought in the last like 3 months, I thought I'm going to go back, start with Saga number 1 and read it. And I had fallen behind. I was probably like 15 issues behind. I thought I'm going to read issue number 1 and get caught up. And I finished it this weekend, and I knew it was a great comic, but it was almost like I had forgot how amazing Saga really is.
Yeah, that actually happened to me whenever I was going to Savannah College of Art and Design, and I was going through all that. I had been getting all the Strangers in Paradise, but I hadn't read them, the old Terry Moore thing, and I would probably had like 30, and then I knew it was getting near the end. I didn't want anybody to spoil it for me, so it's like, well, I gotta get caught up. So when I went home for one of the breaks, I picked up all those issues, and I literally read like 30 35 issues all in like
Wow.
the span of like 2 weeks. And it was just like, just washes over you. And you're just like, wow, this is really, really good.
Yeah.
kind
Well,
of
it's
thing.
funny you say that, Rob, because I mean, I think when it comes down to it, when something grabs you, it becomes visceral and it takes you to another level as far as concern, thought process, and you feel enveloped. I mean, if you will. I mean, it's like a nice sheet grabs you, holds you tight, and that's another different realm that you're in. I mean, that's a good story. That's what you want out of a quality comic book. It's not just the art, it's the story, because anybody can draw something. But when you take that next level and that next step, and it makes you say, hey, I can enjoy this. I mean, this is cool. I can think about this. This relates back to things that I thought about when I was like younger or when I was want to be older and things like that. That's what makes a great story. And there's not a lot of that like going around these days.
Yeah. That's a good segue into my next question. What do you feel like is missing from the current comic scene?
Okay, well, I'll go ahead and pick that up. I think, I mean, when it breaks down, I mean, you have to understand what your base is. I mean, who you're trying to go ahead and what your audience is. And you can cater to the audience, but you kind of have to shake it up a little bit. You want to go ahead and put something out there that's a little bit different, a little bit edgy. It doesn't have to be too edgy because that doesn't make it intro understandable. So when you make it to a certain extent that, hey, I can go ahead and read this. I like this idea. I can go ahead and ride this wave. Because when you're riding the wave, you're feeling that feel. And not a lot of writers these days give you that. And that's kind of one of the things that, I mean, when we pick up a comic book or even like the news, you read a couple letters, like, okay, I got the gist of it. But you want to continue to read and you have to feed that feeling. And that's what people should be giving out these days.
Yeah.
And kind of to that point, I think part of it is there's a certain kind of what's a good way to put it? Sometimes I feel like it's truncated a little bit because I mean technology makes things a lot faster.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's the effort that makes the difference, if that makes any sense.
Sure.
And so you know, like I recently am probably going to look into getting in a Cintiq monitor and doing some digital inking and things of that nature. But there still is something about having an actual finished page in front of you and something like that. And I think, particularly when I go to like cons nowadays, you see these guys with these things, and they've got all these giant, massive prints. And, and it's like, oh, well, you obviously took that one from a drawing or from a real picture of somebody from whatever famous movie, and then you went in and you messed around with it in Photoshop, and now you're selling it as an original piece of artwork as a print or something. And so I think that a lot of people like to, or there's some shortcuts there. And I think sometimes I look at just because you can color it a certain way, and you know, sometimes and messy is good in some cases. Sometimes it's good to have a visceral, raw sort of thing happening, but sometimes it's just lazy.
Yeah.
And I think that that is one of the things. Right now, you're at a really good spot in comic books where there's a little bit of everything. For you know, there's stuff super detailed, super over the top, and then there's also some stuff that's maybe not. And I think right now, the thing that I want to see is I like seeing stuff that's finished, and I don't know what you don't always know. You can't always just put a stamp on it and say, well, that's finished. But you can look at something and say, wow, they really took that to a certain level. And that's what I think is kind of missing from a lot of stuff. I mean, you see really these amazing artists, and you see people that can do such great stuff. And that's what I kind of wish that there was more of, this kind of finished work, so to speak.
Sure.
Well, it's funny you say that, Rob, because one of the things I want to be known for, if push comes to shove, don't remember me for what I did now, but remember for what I did 50 years later, because I want to have that impact. And I want people to be able to say, hey, that guy actually did something different. And I think that lasting impression is one of the things that's missing these days, because when you pick up a great graphic novel, it's not something that was published maybe 2-3 months ago. Something that was done in the 90s, something that was done in the 80s. It was Watchmen. It was The Dark Knight Returns. It was Sandman. Things that, you know, kind of totally bend the spectrum. You know, a little bit of Hellblazer thrown in there and whatnot. And I think that, honestly, if I can have the opportunity to give people that, then I've done my job.
I think my my current 80s, 90s great graphic novel is Doom Patrol. Like I'm just so blown away by
Crawling from the Wreckage.
how great. Yeah. So good.
Yeah, Grant Morrison doing all that stuff. I mean, he was amazing.
Yeah.
And it was very entertaining as well. was
Yeah,
the big
yeah,
thing about
absolutely.
It. So, it was groundbreaking, but also fun, but also, whoa, where are they going with this?
Right. Yeah. It worked on so many levels, depending on how invested you wanted to be into the book. I think that talking about a finished project or finished product or doing something that's a little different, reading things that were, the illustrations have been done digitally, like they look really beautiful. A lot of them look really polished. But the first time I saw a comic that had been watercolored, my mind was blown that like, that looks so different and so beautiful,
Yeah.
So you have a Kickstarter right now. You're working on a current project, but what are some of the projects that you've worked on previously?
We've got about 3 or 4 other little projects that we've done in the past, everything from a little zombie thing to, we've got a very long kind of project that we're working on called Bloom, and it's a 7-issue, each issue is like 40, 45 pages. So it's a bit much to chew, but it's a lot of fun, and it's more of a Cowboy Bebop type universe.
That's
so it's
cool.
very different than what we're doing now. And, but that one will be something that we'll get through where I'm about halfway through the 4th issue on scripting. And we're slowly working towards that. But that one's a strange one because it's kind of had some stops and starts, and so I think when I finish it, I'm probably actually gonna have to go back and look at it and kind of retool it just a little bit to make sure it all meshes really well. Because I'll finish an issue and then maybe I won't do another one for a couple of months and then get back into it, and so we've kind of got this large map, but it's making sure all the pieces fit later. So, but back in the first thing I ever had published was a little short story called Demon Town about a Old West where there was this girl with this bionic arm and all these other crazy stuff, and it was fun, and it was just a little 8-page thing, and it was done by a friend of mine, Dirk Hooper, and it was published in a comic called Rough Cut, and it was kind of fun though. It was neat to play around with and do something, and it's cool to say you got published in a book, and then there were a lot of other ideas and things along the way, but unfortunately, it's like I said, then I became a photographer for a while and kind of got out of it. But there's lots of ideas. I'm working on another thing with somebody else called Amazon Quest, and again, it's another long, but Greek Amazon type thing, cool. History and stuff, and a little bit of a bummer though, because way back when it was written, they had Leonidas and all the Spartans and everything else, and then it's like it was written long before 300 and everything else, and now it's like. Everybody's going like, oh, you got that idea from that? I was like, no. Should have done this when I was back in the 90s. But, but I started it back then and then kind of pulled away from it and then, like I said, then became a photographer for a while in school and everything else. But getting back into things now, it's actually a lot of fun. And I really enjoy doing short stories and small things because I'm not a real quick artist. I think I do well, but it takes a little while to set that up and everything else. Whereas Joe, he's good. He's got good speed.
That's funny. As far as previous works and whatnot, I did a short story with a friend of mine. Actually, it was his father, and it was very passionate work because it was built off of thought processes and short stories and things of that nature. So the illustrations for that, it was called "Where's Your Mind At? You don't know where it's coming before it's going." So that was fun. And a lot of my time that's actually spent when I don't have to work, I kind of visit, hospitals and things like that and get to sit in there and go into the children's ward and, do illustrations and things of that nature and whatnot. I mean, because for me, it's not about the recognition or about the opportunity to make money. I just like making people feel good,
Sure.
Because there's just not enough of that going around these days. I mean, and for me, that reward, it helps me sleep at night. And if I can put a smile on somebody's face, that's the most beautiful thing at the end of the day that I can possibly actually ask for. So, that's me in a nutshell. So
Awesome.
I know what you guys are working on now with the Kickstarter, because I watched the video. You said that you wanted to recreate that 80s horror type feel. So do you guys want to expound any more on that? Like where you drew inspiration from or what that means to you. I don't, because I mean, I think you say 80s horror and everyone has a general idea, but I'm sure you guys had a specific place you were pulling from.
It's funny you say that. I'm glad you actually brought that up. But for me, it's like, I remember, back in the day, kind of creeping down the hallway, watching that movie I wasn't supposed to be watching. And, I go back to the bedroom and I'm terrified. But I mean, that feeling and that moment, I think that's something that people deserve to actually have these days. Because, I mean, the vast majority of horror that you see on television, it's not the same that it should be. Even the movies. I mean, you can go ahead and sit down for about the first 5 minutes. You're like, hey, I think I know where this is going. So I think that moment of being just that suspense, that terrifying moment that, your heart's like, I don't know what's going to go. And I think that's a great thing. And that's one of the things that we're trying to go ahead and capture in this comic book that we're actually trying to create, because the thing is, it worked then, it can work now, and I mean, at the end of the day, people deserve good quality horror. And people deserve good quality stories. So that's just kind of that throwback. And I like it. And I hope you guys do too.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's mostly just kind of, again, it's kind of a love letter, if you will. And now we try to update it. We try to give something new to it if we can. I mean, but we're just gonna do what we can, and that's really what it comes down to. Is it's I remember growing up watching all that stuff, everything from just name it, but there was a lot of good stuff back there that I really enjoyed, and so and it's good to see some of it have a little bit of a revitalization, the whole Ash series and stuff on Stars and everything else, and so. There's that kind of thing, and that's kind of what we hope to kind of capture that vibe a little bit with it.
Zombie.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because we recently watched the old Poltergeist.
Yes.
And then we followed it up a few weeks later by watching the new one. And it was just, the new one was such a disappointment.
If I had not watched the first one, I probably would have liked the second one.
Yeah.
But watching the first one, it didn't come anywhere close.
Well, see, and it's funny you say that, because I mean, that's one of the things that we're trying to go ahead and capture in this particular product, because as you just said, I mean, the redo was not as good as the first one, and people deserve that first experience, and there's nothing out there like that these days, and that's what I feel people need.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so, we hope that, I mean, it's a little bit of a tall order. I mean, I hope that we can pull that off. I mean, it's funds, basically, the whole thing started as just a little Inktober drawing that I did, and it was good. And then next thing you know, he's like, hey, da 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 da, and I'm like, hey, da 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 da, and then next thing you know, we've created this idea, and then we start piecing things together, and we think of some of the favorite movies that we enjoyed, and like, hey, that was a really cool scene. What if we put something like that in this? And then so there's little tips of the hat to characters and to names and things of that are were inspirational, and then hopefully we've created something that's a little different and a little fun. So.
What advice would you give to someone wanting to create their own comic, but specifically because we're in Oklahoma City, what would you give to someone in our area? What advice would you give to someone in our area?
Oh, wow. That's heavy. It's like somebody just dropped like bricks on my back. But, I mean, the thing is, it's like, it's encouragement, putting yourself around like-minded people, finding individuals that have a similar thought process and just grinding it out, because I mean, nothing that's given to you is actually earned, but when you work for it, you have the opportunity to go ahead and say, hey, that's a moment that I actually went ahead and put a foot in the sand and whatnot. So in a word, work, draw, write, talk, build, and just take it from that particular point, because you're not going to get it if you don't go after it, because lazy people sit on couches. Big people make stuff happen. So, just get after there and just make it happen, man.
Yeah. And I think that's basically at the end of the day. I mean, like, I was talking with somebody, it's a little bit different, but I was talking with somebody that was a photographer the other day, and he was just like, well, how do I get this? How do I do this? It's just like, well, you just do it, And now there's a lot more to it than just doing it. But the thing is, you have to be prepared to be not good when you start. You have to prepare to work through those drawings that don't work, and you have to be prepared to go through that process, because that's how anybody that got anywhere succeeded. And I think that it's really easy to get discouraged and go, it doesn't look good. I didn't really get that foot right in that panel, but I'm going to redraw that whole page. No, at a certain point you have to say, I'm done with this and I'm going to move on to this next one. And the next time I draw this, it will be better. But at this point I have to finish it, because if there's one thing I learned when I was in art school is that, it doesn't mean anything if you don't finish it. You have to have that polish. It has to be there. And like I said, it doesn't always mean it's going to be great. And you might look at it 5 minutes later and go, God, I hate that. But you finished it. You did it. It's done, And I think that that's a big part of it, what I would say. And then from a creative standpoint, do something that you love. I mean, there's something to be said for doing, doing a story for somebody or doing something to make some money or what have you. But at the end of the day, you're going to get burnt out and you're going to hate it if you're not doing something you love, if you're not giving back to what you're fulfilling your needs as an artist or as a creator, then that's what you have to do. And if that takes you kind of off the beaten path, then so be it, but do what you love. And then most everything will fall in line after that. So.
And it's funny that Rob actually says that because the first artist that actually had the opportunity to go ahead and look at my work told me it was garbage.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
And I'm still at it. So, I mean, it's that dedication. And my next project, after I get this done, is going to be about chicken and waffles. Because I have that passion. And I like chicken. I like waffles. And if I can figure out a way to go ahead and put that in a comic book, people will read it because what's wrong with that? I mean, it's syrupy goodness.
Nothing. Cory wants to do a zine about nothing but hamburgers. So,
yeah.
All right, there you go.
There you have it. If you can figure out a way to go ahead and make Burger Time a comic book, we're all winning.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, definitely. Well, do you want to plug your Kickstarter?
Yeah, it's just on Kickstarter. Just go to the website. I would read out the thing, but it's all sorts of numbers and letters and what have you. So we'll basically just go through and do a search for Bad Candy. And you can watch our video if you feel like contributing anything. We'd be more than happy. We're gonna if we succeed in doing it, everybody's name's gonna be in the back, kind of that typical thing. We're giving away a lot of original artwork and things of that nature for the pledges. And it's just something. I think it'll be fun. Like I said, go check it out. I'm actually gonna probably do a new update. Needs to be done by November 20th. That's when our deadline is. A little behind the goal, but I feel pretty good about it. I mean, I've got lots of friends that are like, yeah, I'll take care of that when I get paid. When I do this, but we'll see how it goes. But at the moment, it's exciting and it's fun. And we did an appearance at Wizard World where we did that, and we've seen a little bit of traction come from that. And either way, so far, the experience has been really, really good. And,
Awesome.
From writing it to creating it to drawing it to promoting it to being on this and doing a podcast. I mean, it's a lot of fun and it's a great journey and it's part of the whole thing that make comics great. So
Awesome. Well, thank you guys for coming in today.
Is there anything you want to add?
Yeah, you want to add anything?
Anything else you're working on or anywhere else to find you? Instagram, do you have a website for your work or?
Well, do we have a...
We've got a badcandycomic.com website, but right now it's like an embryo of a website.
Gotcha.
It should grow. And I was the guy that was supposed to set it up. Took a little while to set it up, but there's that. I have a Robert Henry Art Facebook page that has a lot of the artwork on there and things of that nature. And we do, and we're doing updates on the Kickstarter thing where you get to see previews of artwork and things of that nature. And so those are the main things that we're doing. And then hopefully along the way, we'll have some other things happening. So,
Awesome.
Well, fair enough for that. I would say you could check out my Facebook page, but it's crazy sauce. But just to be honest with you, I would like to go ahead and thank everybody that's been involved in this particular project, particularly Rob, everybody that I'm staring at right now, because the thing is, nothing happens on your own. It all happens when people can go ahead and sit down together. So again, check out the Kickstarter. If you like it, fantastic. Please pledge. If you don't, I get it, but
it's not everybody's cup of tea. It's an R-rated comic, and so just be aware. But if it's your cup of tea and something you enjoy, then please contribute.
At the end of the day, it's just about a dream, and we're just trying to put something out there that we feel that people would appreciate, and that's about all I have to say. Besides, I I like chicken again. You know? I'm
And
gonna
the
go back
waffles.
and the waffles. I'm gonna bring those waffles back. So there will be a page dedicated to a waffle. I'm gonna draw it by hand, and you will see those waffles. So
Well, thank you guys for making comics and making comics in our community and improving that culture in our community.
All right. Well, and thank you for having us out here.
We hope you enjoyed that interview as much as we did. Remember, you can always get into contact with us. Email contact@graphocast.com, on Twitter @graphocast. Check out the Instagram, Read Brave Comics, or check out the websites graphocast.com and readbrave.com. And we'll see you back here on Wednesday for another full episode of Read Brave, a comics podcast. This has been a Graphomania production. If you would like to hear more podcasts, go to graphocast.com, graphocast.com. Follow us on Twitter @graphocast and like the Graphomania page on Facebook for news and updates.